In the early 1920s, baseball was finally alive again. For years, the sport had been dangerous, slow, and increasingly unpopular. Stadiums echoed with silence. Scores were low. Fans drifted away. The dead ball era had nearly suffocated the game. And then one man changed everything. His name was Babe Ruth. He didn't just hit home runs. He rewrote what baseball could be. He gave the sport spectacle, joy, and a future. By the time he reached his peak, baseball's survival was tied directly to his presence on the field, which is why, on one terrifying afternoon, the entire sport nearly collapsed. One pitch came inside. One moment passed unseen. And baseball came inches away from losing its greatest legend forever. Today, Babe Ruth is remembered for his power, his charisma, and his myth. But this moment, the moment when he nearly died, is rarely discussed. Why? Because it doesn't fit the legend. It reminds us that even the strongest figure in baseball history was fragile. That greatness did not protect him. That fame did not shield him from danger. And more importantly, it exposes a truth baseball has long tried to bury. The game was reckless. The system was broken. And tragedy was inevitable. Although the dead ball era was technically ending, its dangers were very much alive. Baseballs were reused until they were dark, scarred, and misshapen. Pitchers were allowed to alter the ball with spit, mud, sweat, and tobacco juice. The ball often blended into shadows before batters could even react. Protective helmets didn't exist, not because the technology was unavailable, but because toughness was glorified. Players were expected to endure pain. Being hit by a pitch was part of the job. Complaining was weakness. Protection was mocked. Pitchers were encouraged to throw inside, not accidentally, but intentionally, to intimidate hitters and assert dominance. Every at-bat carried risk. Every pitch was a gamble. Baseball was still playing with human lives. Babe Ruth wasn't just any hitter. He stood close to the plate. He crowded pitchers. He waited longer than most hitters before committing to a swing. His size made him slower to react. That combination made him lethal offensively and vulnerable physically. Pitchers knew this. Inside pitches weren't mistakes. They were messages. And one of those messages nearly became fatal. The pitch came high and tight. In an era with poor lighting, uneven shadows, and a darkened baseball, reaction time was minimal. The ball struck Babe Ruth in the head and upper body region with violent force. There was no crack of the bat, no cheer from the crowd. Just a sound witnesses would later describe as unnatural. Ruth collapsed immediately. Players rushed toward him. Trainers sprinted from the dugout. Fans stood frozen, unsure if they had just witnessed a serious injury or a death. For several seconds, baseball's greatest icon lay motionless. And in that silence, the fear was universal. Trainers found Ruth disoriented and bleeding. Doctors checked for skull fractures, internal bleeding, and neurological damage. In the early 1920s, trauma medicine was primitive. There were no CT scans, no advanced emergency procedures. Later, medical assessments revealed the horrifying truth. The pitch had missed a fatal outcome by inches. A slightly higher angle, a slightly different rotation, and Babe Ruth would have suffered catastrophic brain injury. Baseball wasn't lucky. It was spared. This moment terrified baseball because it wasn't unprecedented. Years earlier, Ray Chapman had been killed by a pitched ball. The league promised reform, but tradition slowed progress. Now, baseball was staring at the possibility of losing Babe Ruth, and losing him would not have been just another tragedy. It would have ended the sport's credibility. Parents would have pulled children away. fans would have walked away. The image of baseball as America's pastime would have shattered. The sport was standing on the edge of collapse. Ruth survived, but public patience did not. Newspapers questioned baseball's obsession with toughness. Writers accused the league of valuing tradition over life. Fans demanded accountability. For the first time, safety was no longer an internal discussion. It was a national conversation. Baseball could no longer pretend these incidents were rare. The danger was systemic. Change didn't come quickly, but it came inevitably. Baseballs were replaced more frequently. Doctored pitches were restricted. Inside pitching faced greater scrutiny. The idea of protective headgear once mocked began to gain legitimacy. Batting helmets would take decades to become mandatory, but the culture had shifted. Survival had entered the conversation. Modern baseball looks safer not because the sport was always wise, but because it learned through pain. Every helmet worn today exists because baseball once ignored danger. Babe Ruth didn't just change the game with power. He changed it by reminding the world how fragile even legends truly are. That pitch didn't just threaten a man. It threatened the future of baseball itself. Baseball survived because it finally learned a hard truth. Tradition without responsibility can kill. One pitch nearly took the life of the sport's greatest icon, and that moment forced baseball to confront its own recklessness. This wasn't just the pitch that almost killed Babe Ruth. It was the pitch that exposed baseball's darkest flaw. If you value real stories, forgotten moments, and the history that shaped the game we love, subscribe to Diamond Archives, because baseball's past is more powerful than fiction.